Hi, Jeff Bridgman here of Jeff R. Bridgman Antiques in York County, Pennsylvania. I want to walk you through our booth at the Round Top Antique Show in Round Top, Texas, located about halfway between Houston and Austin. And this is just a massive event. There are at least 66 shows, at least there were last time. I think at least one was added. So not 66 dealers, 66 shows, 66 different antique shows all take place this week and last. So over roughly a 2 to 3 week span in the little burg of Round Top, Texas, which is a beautiful place. I do the show here at the Big Red Barn, which was the original event that started it all, more than 50 years ago now, and continues to be just a great place where other dealers and shoppers for their homes and businesses and designers come to find just a myriad of great stuff. So I'd like to just walk through here with you and show you a few things, my favorite things out of the booth that might be of interest to you. They're at home who can't join us in Round Top. So one of the cooler things I brought this time is this pair of wings, gigantic, right? That were probably used for a Christmas display at Famous Bar, the department store in St. Louis. They have verbal history as to having come out of Famous Bar, which was the flagship, for those of you who don't know, of the May department stores. Look at the great surface on those. I'm sure angel wings from a Christmas display, 1890 to 1920. And they're over top of this tremendous ship's commission pennant. Now, the ship's commission pennant, they can be 100 feet long. By Navy regulation, 90 feet, I think, was the largest, but there's variation and all of that, and I've seen a 100-footer. So this flew at the topmast of a Navy ship and would identify it as a Navy ship. It'd be the first thing you'd see coming over the horizon, and that long skinny pennant, and it would identify it as a warship. This one is Civil War period and just a beautiful hand-sewn example. Sold this many years ago and just lucky to have it back. Down here in this part of the booth, actually hidden around back, is a tremendous game board. It's absolutely enormous. You can see the size of my hand. This great elongated, unusual board done by a carriage painter. And look at the striping, and that's how you can tell when a board is carriage painted. Look at the great geometrics here with the surface is just an absolute 10. At any rate, come over here and take a look at something I've almost never owned in a 19th century example. I think I can think of 3 that I've owned that are 19th century. So this is called the Grand Union, or the Continental Colors, and it was our flag before the Stars and Stripes. So it's showing 13 red and white stripes, but with the British Union flag in the canton. So identifying us as a British colony. This was done 1775 to 1777 until the Stars and Stripes was adopted, and even sometimes afterward. During the Revolutionary War, Washington is thought to have carried it and displayed it. It appeared on American forts and made for the centennial in 1876 in Philadelphia. That is an extraordinary thing to add to any American flag collection. Behind me here is a tremendous 34-star flag that I sold about 20 years ago, and we just remounted and give it a little bit more space and put it in a new frame. Look at all the losses in the flag that really make it show its age. And if you come up here close, you can see written along the top. This is Vicksburg, New Orleans, Atlanta, Wilmington, Charleston, Sumter, for Fort Sumter, Petersburg, Savannah, and right there, Richmond in April of 1865. That's the only dated notation. It's the time that Lincoln is assassinated and the war ends. So remarkable flag that was in all these different places, 34 stars. That's opening 2 years of the war. This is really a recruiting flag. I'm sure made by a guy named Joseph Sebring in New York City. I'm familiar with his work and what they looked like. This would have been 9 feet long originally. So it was at some point cut down and assigned to a unit, most likely, and carried throughout the war. Stars are hand sewn and single applique. Beautiful flag. Oh, we have to have a stop here because this is the best carved early eagle that I've ever had. You can see that he's perched on clouds, and look how far he comes out from the wall. Beautiful ebonized eagle perched on clouds. And around 1790 to 1810, bring you in here for a closer look. Great surface. Now, beneath it, this apron was made for a little girl, 12-year-old girl in Ohio, that was raising money for the Sanitary Commission. The Sanitary Commission was the predecessor of the Red Cross, and they funded Civil War and staffed Civil War hospitals. A lot of fundraising was needed for that, but what they found, in the beginning of the war was that Civil War hospitals, which were put up wherever they were needed and run by men, were not as cleanly as one might hope, and was necessary during the war. So the Sanitary Commission came in to handle that. It was started by members of the Union League Club in New York, where I do exhibits and am a member. A few other influential members of the clergy and local women in New York City, and eventually became the Red Cross. It was really the predecessor of the Red Cross. Now, here in the front are two of my favorite things. On top, we have a 38-star Indian Wars period guidon. A guidon was a marker flag. There would have been two of them, one on either side of the unit, so that whoever was leading the unit could see exactly where his guys started and ended during battle, and to keep them in formation just while marching or riding. In this case, this is an infantry guidon from the 4th U.S. Infantry, which was very active in the West. Hardly any 38-star examples like this exist, which covers much of the Indian Wars period between 1876 and 1889. In fact, because Civil War guidons were sometimes left in overstock and carried in the West, and because these things just didn't survive when they were out there, hardly any of these survive in any form. There are almost no 38-star examples. There's one or maybe two 37-star examples. almost nothing. And that covers both cavalry and infantry. And there were plenty of them at one time. I think West Point has a couple. There's the armory of the first Philadelphia troop in Philadelphia. I think they have a couple. I'm really unaware of any others, even in museum collections. So this has embroidered stars around a numeral 4. Great thing. Below, one of my favorite posters. I don't know if you can really tell how big this is, but this is not Buffalo Bill, but it is instead Buffalo Ranch, Real Wild West, Real Indian War Dance, a lesson in the history of pioneer days and games of the real red men and camel races. Oh my gosh. Look across the top here. Look how colorful this is. Here's the camel races. Just a beautiful example. And this is from Hunt Brothers Circus. And the guy that ran Hunt Brothers, that started it all, he was actually called Mr. Circus. Very prominent guy in that world. Around behind me, and is a great flag that I sold, which is from the Grant and Colfax campaign of 1868. This was the first time Grant ran for the presidency and he won. This is easily one of the best that exists from this campaign in 1868, with a great star pattern, star made out of stars, a star in the middle and a star in each corner. It's, which one is the very best? This is right there. It could be argued that this is. There are a couple of others that are also great, but it is one of the great ones, and it's the only known example in this style. Gigantic for a campaign flag. Up top, one of my favorite hooked rugs that I've owned anytime recently, with a waving flag and "Don't Tread on Me" and a banner across the middle. In modern times, I would expect to see that verbiage, but when this flag was made, around the turn of the century, 1880s to 1910 at the latest, that is not something that is often seen. That phrase was not widely used and popularized. It was on certain flags made during the Revolutionary War, and sometimes you see them, reproduced for things like the Centennial Exposition or the Chicago World's Fair, but it was minimal use of that. So it's great to see. The 5 stars could have a women's suffrage reference, as the number of states was that actually approved suffrage in the West, starting in the West and moving east. Did total 5 at one point in the 1890s. Is that the reason for the 5 stars? Maybe. They certainly look intentional. This rug was included in a book by Joel and Kate Kopp, America Hurrah Antiques, the famous wonderful folk art and textile dealers from New York City. And what a great thing. Below me here is a Center County, Pennsylvania blanket chest in salmon with black decoration, black painted trim, 3 drawers, these wonderful splay feet. Center County is where Penn State is. Lived there for a time. There is wonderful floral decoration on the front, as you can see, and this is a form I'm familiar with that I've seen several times. The salmon paint, you really can't quite get the picture here. It looks almost natural, like natural wood in the video, but it's actually very much salmon orange red in person. It's starting to look a little bit more, and what I can see, like that's a little bit more accurate color wise. So behind me here we have a tremendous Confederate example. This is in the style of the Army of Northern Virginia flags, made in 9 different issues in Richmond. And 7 of those issues were in wool bunting, like this flag. Those are really the first Confederate flags were in this format, were made there. This design was put to use in late 1861 because the original First National, or Stars and Bars, this is not the Stars and Bars, this is the Southern Cross, but the Stars and Bars look too much like the Stars and Stripes on the battlefield. It had between 7 and 13 stars usually, although it can have other star counts, based upon however many states were included by the maker that were thought to be loyal to the Confederacy or part of it at the time. And at First Manassas, the guys were shooting each other on both sides because the flags looked too much alike. So that was the purpose of this. And Joe Johnston, Confederate general, and Beauregard together proposed that this become the new design. And although they were turned down, Johnston and Beauregard approved it, really Johnston, at the field level, saying, okay, we're just going to defy this order from the Confederate government because we don't want our guys to be shooting one another on the field. And not all units carried it, but this is really the classic format with a white border. These were made in flags in this design. Don't know if this particular one was made there, but were made in Richmond. And the bunting issues, wool bunting like this, were done in kits that the women would take home. So at the Richmond Depot, they made all sorts of uniforms, anything textile related that a soldier might need in the field. And they also made flags. There were 2,000 women working there at one time, as 600 in addition actually worked on site. Those just cut fabric and prepared it and did all the organizing that was necessary there. The 2,000 were at home. They would come in and pick up a kit and go home and make the object and come back. There wasn't enough space there. So you can imagine what kind of operation that was like. It was women and daughters of soldiers and anybody they could get off the street. So this flag could have been made there, although it's a little different than any of the issues. But tremendous hand-sewn Civil War artifact. Going over here, let's take a look at this kerchief. This is after the painting by John Trumbull of this, what's he called the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and others did too, but it was pretty well known that it wasn't the signing, but these were the guys that were there and approved the draft for the Declaration that was signed at various times over a period of months. I have had this example before done in 1826, we think, for the 50-year anniversary of independence. And I've never seen one that's actually the color it was supposed to be, red. All the ones I've ever had were brown or some sort of tan, and I was suspicious that they probably were actually red initially. And they come in 2 different formats. The other one has little headshots down here that identify each guy, and this one has just and their name. But I like this one better than the other because it's more graphic. I think it's prettier and extraordinarily rare. And like I said, the only one I've ever seen that's actually red. There was a blue version as well, and it was typical to make these in sometimes 3 different colors. Maybe another color would be mostly black and white. Um, that's how it sometimes goes, but probably made in England for the American market, like many of the early textiles like that, but wonderful thing. Talking about kerchiefs, let's come around here to take a look at this Benjamin Harrison example from 1888. Easily one of the best designs known to exist. Harrison ran in 1888 and 1892, but this is specifically for the 1888 campaign, with 92 just showing the bracket in which he did win, successfully serve as president. What's fun is around the outside here, there were 38 states at the time, and there are 39 stars around the perimeter, including Dakota. Dakota, not North Dakota, not South Dakota, but Dakota. It was thought that the Dakota Territory was going to come as one state at this time. So the makers of this particular kerchief have included it here. It's really just the Dakota Territory, but they've included it with a star, obviously bringing it into the fold before the event even happened. North and South Dakota came on the same day, 1 year later, on November 2nd of 1889. So that's a really fun thing to see. But what's great about this is the eagle itself, and on a nest with eaglets. There's an image of this on the cover of Threads of History, which is the Bible, if you will, of American political textile collecting. Easily one of the best designs that exists of all periods. Above it, I have this wonderful and very rare paper suffrage pennant, see, with votes for women and various Western style lettering. Love that particular one. Behind me is a 28 star flag. So Texas joined the Union as the 28th state in 1845. This flag does not date to that period. 28 star flags are super rare, however, and ones that actually date to the period, there's a small handful of them known, 10 or 12 flags. This one is 19th century and was probably made at the time of this centennial in 1876, or perhaps for 50 years of Texas, from the Texas Revolution. That would be 1886. That's certainly a possibility. Stars are all hand sewn. Looks like, in terms of its construction, a late Civil War flag. I would say 35 star period. So somebody at home made this wonderful hand stitching to put these two panels together. Treadle stitched through the rest of the design, but either made for maybe the Texas pavilion at the Centennial Exposition, or just for a celebration within the state. Was found in Texas. Up top here is a great Teddy Roosevelt kerchief with a bull moose in the middle from 1912. Silk, tremendous condition. Great new game board I got here. Not new of course, but circa 1880. Paint decorated. Backgammon, of course. And look at the beautiful, also carriage painted with all sorts of wonderful scroll work. And there's metal studs, I don't know if you can see them, along both the top and bottom, and checkers on the reverse. Great surface. Look at this wonderful calligraphy eagle that is unusual in its elongated format. Unlike most of these that I find, which take up a typical rectangular page, this one was done that way, but There was nothing above it or below it. It was only the center. All the white space was not necessary for the object, and it's much better in just showing the drawing itself rather than the whole piece of paper that the artist was working on, which had nothing else on it. I've never seen one like that, and this was done in 1874 in Pennsylvania. E.H. Worst, Penman, Hellertown, Northampton County, Pennsylvania, it's north of Philadelphia, executed with a common steel pen. Very fun. What else can we have a look at here? I have two flags made by Betsy Ross's great-granddaughter and granddaughter, Rachel Albright and Sarah Wilson. Great to see these two things together. They made these little guys in the East Wing of Independence Hall in Philadelphia around the turn of the century, starting about 1898 for Rachel, and a little bit afterwards for Sarah. Although Sarah appears to have probably sat there with her for the first 4 years and helped her sign the flags, because although she could stitch incredibly well, I don't think that she could actually write. So Sarah seems to have signed all of the flags, both Rachel's and her own. And it was really these two women making these flags that put this design, the Betsy Ross pattern, into our history books. Above, this is a great painted banner. Blue Lick, drink the genuine Blue Lick, the queen of health waters, from the famous Blue Lick Springs of Kentucky. Awarded gold medal over 100 competitors at the Louisiana Purchase Exposition. So Louisiana Purchase Expo was in 1904. So probably the banner, which is just riveting in person because of how strong the color is on that, probably around 1910 or so. Up top here, look at this interesting striation and the staining on this particular flag, which almost adds sort of a modernistic element. Better in person than it appears here in the video. But this is a 44-star flag. That's Wyoming statehood, 1890 to 1896, an hourglass pattern. Flying above, you might have noticed, is this great decoy of an owl. All paint decorated. I would say that this guy dates maybe to the 1920s. He could be a little earlier. Wonderful, wonderful example. There he is. Little camera issue here. Up top, this poster is an image that I have loved for a long time. This is a Howard Chandler Christie. I'd seen this design when researching images of Lady Columbia, of which this is sort of an outgrowth. Very much Art Nouveau looking image. This poster, I had no idea of the rarity. I've been looking for one for a long time, and I approached one of the top poster guys in America, probably the best guy for American posters, and I asked about it, and he said, "You're never going to believe it, that I bought this poster last week. I've never actually seen it before, and I wasn't even aware of the image." So it had just never come up in any of his searches, and unreal that I just happened to call him at the and be asking about another poster at the time that he just happened to come across one. So thrilled to own it. Just a great image of Lady Columbia, and we'll wrap up here with this 22-star flag. So the 22nd state was Alabama. but that was really early on. We're talking 1820s. Almost no 22 star flags exist that are period. This particular one was actually made at the time of the Civil War, removing the southern states from the star count. It's a homemade flag with a wool and cotton blended fabric used in the red stripes, and a blanket wool in the canton, and hand sewn stars. Looks more like early war than late war, but it could be either. A lot of times people that want a flag that represents their state, such as Alabama, will be thrilled to own an example like this that's early and actually shows a pro-northern message, but is just a great story. People that love flags generally love great stories, and that's certainly a good one. So I hope you've enjoyed our little walk through the Round Top Show. Make sure that you come down and visit us here at Jeff R. Bridgman, American Antiques, at the Round Top Antique Show in the Big Red Barn, and come to our website, www.jeffbridgman.com, and have a look there. Always a lot of fun things to see. Take care. Thanks.